Okay, we will reconvene into public session. And before I turn the mic over to the chief, first and foremost, thank you all for being patient and waiting. This was an extremely important decision being made, and we definitely considered every aspect of it. And so with that said, Chief, if you'd like to take the mic for now.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to I'll speak to y'all because you're the ones that are still here. But I'm not trying. Sometimes I make inappropriate jokes because it's a stress response of mine. And but I can tell you that I know that there's nothing it's funny about how much work y'all put into getting here. I appreciated the conversations that I've had with each one of you, and I truly feel like with Dr. Davis's help that we were able to go from 62 to 32 to 16 to 6 to 3 and make really sound decisions for the organization every step of the way as we brought it down. And well, I can't say what I said in executive session because that's against the rules, but what I have said before outside of executive session, and it holds true, is that I could pick 10 different competencies that are on that chief's, that are on the list of competencies that are in the job description, and rank each one of you by those and get a different winner each time. And so, and I think without speaking for the board, it was my observation that one of the reasons that this decision was so challenging is because you all three are excellent candidates. And I just appreciate that you want to be a part of the Sedona Fire District. And I think that what that shows to me is a lot of things I've had pride in, but it really enforced that, the pride that I have in our organization and the people that make it up. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure every one of you did your homework. And you wouldn't want to come to work for a place that didn't have good people. And so that was the biggest take home for me, is just how much it reinforced the fact that Sedona's made of good people, and that I'm thankful to have met each one of you. And I just want to say thank you. So.
Okay, is there any other comment from the board in regards to that? Well, the moment is before us. Oh, Al?
I just wanted to say that when I ran for the fire board, I never really realized how tough the decisions that I would be asked to participate in are. And I'm honored to be one of 5, but most importantly, having met the 3 of you has truly inspired me. And I feel that this town's extremely fortunate that all 3 of you chose to go through this to be here. And I want to thank you.
Corey?
Yes, and when we started out and got those 62 applications, of course we were thrilled. We almost joked that the very best outcome would be to have 3 such high-standing applicants as a finalist that we would have great difficulty in choosing. And we wanted that outcome, and we got that outcome. And some of our delay in getting back to you has been because of that outcome. So it is, I like your word, inspiring. I feel the same way, that all 3 of you have inspired me.
Gene?
What Corey said. No, absolutely, Mahavia. This is very difficult. However, we are where we are today, and thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you brought to us. Thank you.
Enjoy.
I also concur, and I wanted to let you all know that it was a very difficult decision. We took a lot of time and deliberation, and the 3 of you are just the best of the best, and I really appreciate all of your time, your family's time, all the consideration and research that's been done, and just thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think that just leaves me. And I've got to tell you, in 35 years that I put in with the fire service, making lots of decisions, as you well know. This ranks right up there with one of the most difficult. And to those two that we do not select, you take back to your respective districts pride and honor and knowing that you finished as high as you did. So nothing to be ashamed of. I'm proud of all three of you guys, and I would love to work with any one of you. So with that said, thank you guys for all the work that you've done. But that being said, there can only be one winner, so to speak. So I would like to entertain a motion to appoint candidate Trotwine as the fire chief for the Sedona Fire District, contingent upon a background check, a medical and psychological, and subject to approval of a final employment contract, and authorizing the fire chief to execute the same, consistent with benefits as outlined in the contract, with the base salary starting at step 5 and an approximate start date of August 21st. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. Congratulations, Chief Troutline. Come on up, Chief, and you shake all our hands.
Tell them.
That was my first directive to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you. We're looking at big things. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, indicate about the other. Is he gonna speak? Do we have him speak, or is he?
Let me, you know, I will.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 minutes? 2 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I may, Chief Troutwine, Chief-elect Troutwine, would you like to say a few words?
First of all, just I want to acknowledge the other two candidates too. I didn't know where this was headed because I know all three of us are right there neck and neck, but so I'm a little bit surprised, but I'm honored, and I'm excited and honored, and I'm really looking forward to our relationship together, and being a part of a great place and a great board and a great district, and this is probably one of the best days of my life. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
honored to be part of it. Thank you. Thank you. Chief Coyle, also, the board would like to direct you to start your contract negotiations as soon as possible with legal counsel, and to ensure that we come to an agreement as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. With that said, we still have a meeting to get through. Can you believe that? But we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene to allow our guests to either stay or be on their way. Thank you very much. Okay, with that said, we're on item number 7B, as we've already done the public forum, which is item A, which is the consent agenda, which consists of the May 21st, 2019 regular meeting minutes and the May 21st, 2019 executive session minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda passes. Next item up on the agenda is the financial report and updates. Finance Director, Mr. Gabe Boldra.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
members
sir.
of the board, I'd like to read the finance report line by line today.
Very funny.
All joking aside, you do have the May financial report in your packet. Couple things I do want to highlight, though, briefly. You'll see our property tax revenue for the month was under budget by $115,000. We are trending under year to date as well, although I do anticipate us making that up within the next month for the year. Non-labor revenue, $265,109, slightly over budget there by $62,000. On the expense side, our total expenses were $1.1 million. We were roughly $200,000 under budget for the month. My only comment I want to make on that is we were over in vehicles and equipment due mainly to some year-end purchases on timing, more specifically some hose purchases. And then also communications and IT support was over due to timing on dispatch costs. We paid 2 months in the month of May. So year to date, overall, we're looking really good. Total revenue at $17,085,000. It puts us over budget by $447,000 for the year. Total expenses at $13.8 million puts us under budget by $939,000 for the year. As you can see, all of our expense categories across the board are under budget. I do, with personnel, the one thing is we do a year-end accrual entry. So although we're significantly behind year to date, when we do the accrual adjustment at year-end, I anticipate us being pretty close to just under budget or right on budget on our personnel expenses.
And what does that do for us in a carryover into the new budget?
So
Or is that coming up?
So as far as our carryover, which obviously we have allocated out those funds, and I don't have the exact breakdown of the allocation in front of me, but it does look like we are going to end the year with approximately a $1.5 million carryover. So
Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay, yeah.
continuing on, is see percentage of expenses year to date. We've expended 86% of our budget, with 14% remaining for the final month of the fiscal year. Percentage, personnel expenses at 84%, followed by operations at 11, and managerial at 5. And then finally, just kind of follow up to your kind of question there, year-over-year cash position, you'll see we're at $9.6 million this year compared to just under $5.8 million the previous year. So some of that is due to some of this timing on expenses, but again, I do anticipate us roughly 1.4, 1.5 to the positive year over year. So unless there's any other questions, that concludes the financial report for May.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the June financials as presented by, June 2019 as presented by finance
The May.
manager? May, I'm sorry, May, correct. Do I have a motion to approve May
Motion to
finances?
approve?
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the approval of the financials? Aye.
Aye.
Any disapprove? None? Motion passes for the approval of the financial report for May. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is our staff report from Chief Coyle.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Pension funding policy.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Next item on the agenda is discussion, possible action, review, and approval of the pension funding policy. Mr. Boldra.
Yep, just briefly, Mr. Chair, board members, this is a legislative change that came out in the last cycle. Requires us by July 1 to post our unfunded pension liability and our plan to pay it off. Our recommended policy is that we plan to pay it off following the 20-year amortization set out by PSPRS and identify in every budget year potential additional funds or surpluses that we could allocate to our unfunded liability. One note I would make on that is understanding that until we see some stabilization on our unfunded liability, we don't want to actually take any funds and apply it to that unfunded liability, but it is something we do want to continue to monitor. And after we start seeing some stabilization and that unfunded liability not changing so much year over year, that we would then begin actually addressing an additional mechanism to fund and pay down that liability. So,
Okay.
With
Is this where we are, I think we agreed to pay it on a 20-year time frame, but at the 10-year rate is
What we did is we converted to the 30-year amortization,
30 to 12, okay.
but we're paying at the 20.
Gotcha, that's what the numbers were. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that said, I need a motion. I'll make the motion. I move to approve the PSPRS pension fund policy and accept SFD's share of the assets and liabilities under the system based on the system's actuarial valuation report to be posted on our website effective July 1st, 2019. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? No? Let's see, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for the approval of the PSPRS pension fund policy. Thank you. Okay. Next up is the staff report from Chief Coyle, or the fire chief's report.
Yeah, if it's all right with the board, I'd like to sit, if that's okay.
That's fine.
My back's a little jacked up here, but anyhow, we'll go through this. So the incident summary year-to-date and response times for and the responses year-to-date are behind you. You know, these numbers, being that they're aggregated from all the different call types, you know, I have a hard time calling out anything of interest on here, so I'll just move on. Because this right here, I think will be more interesting to you, because in all those call types here, we have those ones we have things that are categorized as urgent or non-urgent emergent calls. Of the emergent calls, previously what we did is we reported to you on the 90th percentile of the total reflex time. And looking back at the way those times being reported and the interest, rightfully so, I think the board has in those numbers, it was hard to intuit out of what the causes were of those fluctuations. So what Carrie did for me, I just came with the bright idea, Carrie made it look pretty, was take the total reflex time and break it down into travel times, turnout times, and the call processing time as represented by the different color graphs. So, you know, what that does for me is it shows that the turnout time, which is the red number, or the red part of the bar graph, which is the number that we have the most control over as far as, you know, the effort that's put into getting out the door, the way the stations are designed to allow for quick access to the engines during nighttime hours, those kind of things, have remained relatively constant. And again, this is the 90th percentile, so much higher standard than just averages. The travel time has changed significantly. As you can see, the travel time, average travel time went up. Now, if I were a habitually anti-traffic person, I would say that, traffic is bad. But it can also be that the calls during May happened to be a large number of those emergent calls were further away from the stations. Mm-hmm. Over time, you'll see the trends, and traffic certainly comes into play. Whether it did come into play to a greater degree in May or not, I couldn't tell you. But if it pleases the board, we'll continue to report them this way, so you have the ability to tell the difference between the different components that make up that total reflex time versus just reporting that overall number.
And is that call processing time, is that good?
It's fair. It's not great. It's not terrible. That was an awful answer, though, and I apologize for that. That call processing time is something that I want to do more research on to find out how it is relative to our previous call processing time prior to turning over the alarm room, and what it is relative to national standards. And if it's all right with you, Mr. Kamel, then next month I'll give you a better answer, because I don't want to just give you a wishy-washy
Having
one.
been to the call center, I find it interesting to see how long does it take them to pass on the baton to the next level. So
Absolutely. That's a fair question, and I will have a better answer for you next month.
Okay.
The incident response by station, again, the same sort of representative trends that we see every month. Grant activity. So the assistant firefighter grant, we're still waiting with bated breath to find out if we received the grant for the 85 mobile radios that we've submitted. A new grant that's on there is to the Tohono O'odham Nation, with the help of Yavapai County, because it takes a county to receive these funds, and they've agreed to receive them on our behalf if we're successful. Firefighter Sean Foster, who's known for the cool jackets that we have that he got on a grant, was able to, or had written a grant for $30,000 to get another trail rescue vehicle for these backcountry rescue calls. And so I'm hopeful that he will be successful.
There'll be a total of 3?
It'll be a total of 3. And this what it'll do is allow us to have 2 always in district when we send one out, and then during the wintertime, have a 3rd one out, probably at Station 3. And then one of the plans after last winter's weather events that we weren't prepared for was to get plows and have those where they're able to plow the different areas with the Polarices. Whatever they are, multiple Polarises. Yeah. CRM, that you see there that they have, obviously a tab issue there where I have 8 hours is over further to the right, but they had 130 fire inspections, 35 engine company inspections, 102 fire and life safety system inspections, 24 plan reviews, and 8. And then the fire of significance was a structure fire damage estimated at $25,000 that was caused by an e-cigarette malfunction. So these people are fortunate to have gotten out of their home alive. Their bed was on fire by the time they awakened.
Oh, wow.
And they were able to survive the event. So reported all the information up about the type it was to see if, there's no UL rating on these things. So some of the normal, good message for the public is the normal protections that you can kind of be guaranteed when you go buy, say a rechargeable toothbrush that has a UL rating and that's gone through all the different testing. Those, when you buy gray market e-cigarette devices, use at your peril, especially with lithium-ion batteries in them. That is, if they expose to air, they'll catch fire in and of themselves. So, training highlights. There's a number of different items here, and the one that I wanted to touch on that was kind of a little bit unique for this month was that we DPS came up here and utilized our facility to provide members of the Sedona Fire District and others with an EOD class, so they could basically, it was to recognize improvised explosive devices, and so they knew what those would look like, and not necessarily how you would handle them, but just to be able to recognize them and know when you needed to call somebody else. And then it also touched on some of the other things that may occur if you went in an area where somebody maybe had old mining or old blasting equipment from a previous thing. Give a little bit of idea of what is very risky and what is only kind of risky, and so that people don't touch the wrong thing. But it was an interesting class. Yes, sir.
It's happened before, and to advise the public that if they do find something, don't bring it to the fire station.
That's a good point. Yep.
So true.
There's no donations to Sedona Fire this period. Thank you letters. There's a couple different things I want to touch on quickly. One was a patient showing her gratitude for the compassion the crew showed during a medical event where she came to the station to get a routine check done, and they saw a reason for concern. And what struck me is that we focused a lot on the technical competencies, and which are essential to us being able to do our job well. But she was very descriptive in the letter, saying that had they not been so compassionate, she wouldn't have followed their advice to go to the hospital. And she was truly faced with a significant medical emergency. And it just reminds us sometimes it's not just the accuracy of the information, but that compassionate delivery of the information that makes a difference in good customer service. And that really kind of highlighted it for me. And then I also, Chief Mazulis, Chief Lukowski, others that volunteered their time at the burn and diabetes camp that they attended between last board meeting and this board meeting. I think they deserve all of our gratitude. They're doing a great thing, have for a number of years, and it made a difference in a lot of children's lives. So I think that's super important.
Thank
What's
you,
your
Chief.
nickname, Ed? Booter. Everybody has a nickname. Significant events for the last month. May 22nd, 23rd, snowstorm. Pretty weird. People wrecking, and another significant event, wildland fires. Almost, literally days after we talk about the weird event being a snowstorm, we've sent different crews out to different wildland fires. Have them out right now, come back today, and they're already getting pimped to go to another incident if we can get another crew up and ready. So it's happening quickly. And then, of course, the fires on 179 were part of that wildland fire experience. Closed 179. I tell you, the initial concern was that somebody had purposely started those fires, And then as they pulled all the resources there, and now Highway 179 was closed, go start a fire somewhere else. A little early in the season to be real successful at doing that, but it was certainly cause for concern. So while, because of our great, I think, we have a great interagency working relationship with the Forest Service. I was able to call and then text their duty officer and Chief Baker, who was the battalion chief that day, and say, hey, after multiple calls, after multiple fires started, I'm like, I'm going to come down. I was at home and had this great idea of getting a bunch of emails done. But anyways, come down, and then after talking to everybody, they said, hey, you go to the canyon and just wait there. So that was my role that day. Was I went to Slide Rock and then to Station 5 and waited there until resources got back in pocket, just so we had eyes on the canyon in case it was unpurposeful. Ended up it wasn't, but it was just great to see between the different agencies, everybody chipping in, doing their part, and they cut us loose quick, allowed us to respond to other emergencies that happened immediately after that. Just great interagency working relationship.
And it was caused by a chain?
It was caused by a catalytic converter failing.
Catalytic converter.
Yep. These screenshots are my attempt to capture in stills what Josh Wells and Cooper Carr did in a video so during CPR Awareness Week, they being Josh is the primary mastermind behind this, created videos to talk, 5 different videos to talk about CPR and the different the different chains of survival. And this one, Cooper is the person doing his CrossFit exercise on the top, who all of a sudden experiences chest pain in the middle, passes out, and then to demonstrate what needs to be done, he quickly became a half mannequin with a very hairy wig. And then Josh came in there and did that, and they did a wonderful job. They have 5 videos up. They reached thousands of people with them. I think it was an appropriate combination of humor and a really powerful message. And it was they were very well done. They're funny too. Another significant event: crews utilized trail rescues and BC vehicle to access a critical patient. This Chief Mazulis was on this call, but this patient was unresponsive at the scene, and their interventions directly resulted in that patient being able to talk and to be delivered to the hospital in viable condition. Had they not intervened, he most certainly would have been dead. And it's funny, I feel somewhat awkward sometimes riding around these lifted up pickups all the time when people just see us on the pavement wondering why we have them like that. But when you go up Schnebly Hill Road and those areas where those calls occur is the reason we have these trucks, these lifts on them, and we have these Polaris Rangers, because they were able to get up in there, leave the ambulance on the edge of the pavement, and quickly get that patient back to the ambulance and get him to definitive care. So
what made him collapse?
He had a cardiac event.
Oh, really?
Yep, and it was significant enough that he most certainly wouldn't have survived without our assistance.
Chief, was the modification to the Polarises, did it come into play with the new cages, the new gurney format?
Ed, would you speak to that since you were there?
My brain's a little off, and I'm trying for you in the medical profession, trying to frame the criticality of the call without getting in the weeds. But the bottom line is absolutely we had to pace. This is midway up Schnebly Hill, and we had to capture and transcutaneous pace the patient, and which means we put on external pads and shock their heart every 70 times a minute. And so yes, having that patient's chest area and everything inside the cab where the medic could work, and there's a lot going on, drug administration and stuff. It was absolutely critical that it was fortuitous that that we had the equipment available and we're able to utilize it, and it's the proof in the pudding moment where you're like, it worked, it was the right thing to do, and it solidified that. And Schnebly's the worst I've ever seen it.
Yeah,
It's a horrible road.
Yeah.
It isn't even a road.
No, I've never seen it that bad.
It's a creek bed.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Other significant events are 2 aircraft-related events. One was a plane that drifted off the runway and then flipped over. And then a less common, because that unfortunately happens fairly frequently, event was a hot air balloon basket where a member of the company that owns the hot air balloons that was in the basket was ejected out of the basket. I guess that's the right way to say it. It was thrown from the basket while the basket was landing, and the basket rolled over on him. I don't want to play guess, but anybody care to guess how much the basket of that weighs empty.
It's heavy.
1,000
It's-
pounds?
Yeah, it's about 1,400 pounds, and then it had 10 people in it. So it was the blunt force trauma was consistent with being in a rollover accident, having a vehicle roll over on you.
It
And-
broke his leg in several places.
I understand that may have happened.
No,
Sorry, we just can't.
HIPAA.
We just can't
Yeah.
talk about it.
Oh, you can't say that?
HIPAA,
You can. I just can't.
But,
No, I talked to the balloon people.
but HIPAA.
anyway, Chief, question I have for you on the airplane incident. It seems that we've had, and it just came out in the newspaper, several aircraft
Yeah.
incidents up there. And it seemed as a result of the article that came out that they're not as open as you would expect the airport personnel to be about an incident that has just occurred up there. Do we've got anything working in the works with Sedona Fire and airport management to create something more than what we have, or do we need equipment up there that we need to be looking at that is at the ready, or what's in the works with that? And I don't know if that's getting off agenda, but we are talking
No,
about
no. I think that I mean, certainly discussion, without any directed action is perfectly appropriate in this part of it because is one of the events we're talking about. And there's no specific actions that have been taken with them other than having conversations. There's been some turnover in the airport management recently, and we could certainly talk to them. I could tell you that in the past, and past years past when I was a captain, there would be times when there was reticence to, at least was my perception, that there's reticence to report certain events because maybe it would cast the airport or that particular place in a bad light, or there could be consequence if there's a certain number of portable events like emergency locator transponders going off. And I can understand that if you have an airport and you're bringing a lot of day traffic, you wouldn't want somebody to misrepresent a couple of accidents to be like you have a dangerous airport or something like that. But relative to the reporting, I can tell you that kind of my standard is that we get on this, if there's an aircraft event and I'm uncertain, and whether it has to do with a balloon crash out in the field or if it's something that happens at the airport, if I'm uncertain about what the appropriateness of the reporting is, then I just call the FAA watch desk and explain to them what I have and whether or not there's injuries or not, and give them a tail number and let them decide. And so what I could do is I can talk to the airport and find out if there is any issues there, because I'm not aware of any.
Well,
but
by coincidence, I've had this conversation with the general manager. Before the article came out, I told her it was going to happen because the newspaper was upset that they were getting all the information from the fire department, including your photos, and they weren't being given access to the airfield. And they didn't understand that the standard protocol is normally let the press on and they'll stay out of the way.
Yeah, so maybe that's...
And I knew that they were asking for a pushback, and she said, why does the fire department take pictures? Why does the fire department give them that information? She didn't understand that that's just how the system works.
Yeah,
And
it's
so-
probably worth me having a conversation with her then, just to make sure we're kind of normalize expectations, if nothing else. Certainly.
And you do issue the press releases, I guess, where they had enough facts to put underneath the photo about the plane.
Oh yeah, I mean that stuff. It's newsworthy for a couple reasons, and our primary reason for highlighting it is it's another hazard that we deal with, that we're trained to deal with, and I think it's an attempt to give the public confidence in the fact that the money that they're spending provides a response capability that can deal with the multiple different hazards that occur within the community. I'd be interested to find out, and like I said, I'll follow up with their counterpoint to that level of transparency is, and see where we can make sure that we're.
And I've spoke with the board president about this, and he's still reticent to call the newspaper or to deal with them, and he maybe.
Yeah, well, I'll follow up with the airport, make sure that we have a shared understanding, and the media thing. Certainly, I'll leave that up to them to address.
Well, Chief, I think perhaps maybe it'd be in our best interest if we agendize this whole topic with various areas that we want to discuss, whether it be portable equipment, response routes, apparatus that are supposed to be out there on a response like this, all the way down to news media. Is this a code 20 incident type of thing, or all those aspects that deal with this, because the feeling I get just based on what I see and what I read, it's like we're kind of outside the loop a little bit. I think we need to be more
Okay.
aggressive. So
Yeah, if that's, so you, if you want to have that agendized, I don't know what can and can't under the chief's meeting, but I'm sure you can add anything to the agenda, so
yeah.
I'm sure that part's fine.
Well, then if I could direct staff then to
Yeah, or
agendize airport operations,
Yep.
I guess, would be
Sure.
an overall topic that we can have time to prepare and discuss
Perfect.
next meeting. Thank you.
You bet. So social media outreach, some of the numbers last 28 days, new page likes, 589 new people liked our page. That's up 318%. Post reach is up 457% at a little over 250,000. New page followers was 601 during that 28-day period, up 314%. The most engaged post was a picture of Slide Rock during the snowstorm. And three of the key messages that carried really well through there was the health and wellness of the firefighters and health and wellness initiatives with the public that were being engaged in, wildland fire and evacuation preparedness, and then that CPR chain of survival. So purchases over 10,000. There's one was an annual agreement for all our Microsoft licensures, and the other one is a purchase order that you have a board action for that's going to be discussed later on. So I'd be happy to have a conversation in greater depth with any board members. I could make this a half an hour topic, but I'm going to make it a 5-minute topic. And because we've already talked about it before, it's in the budget, and I think we've done this well. But at the end of the day, our strategic plan management software right now is clunky, and it makes it hard to align strategic plan with budget, with goals, with actions, with performance indicators. And we're looking to change that. So, and what we want to do is have this where the performance management tool will have a budgeting, a KPI part, data-driven decisions, resource allocation, strategic prioritization of the different objectives. So if there's multiple competing objectives for a finite amount of resources, then it would make it easier for board members to sit down with the chief and say, hey, you know what, why is it that this one's more important than that one? Have those conversations and drive that strategic level decision making. It will also improve our operational planning. It will be able to track progress better on tasks. So anyone from the fire department can look at this strategic plan and go, okay, this is why we're doing that. That's what those resources being allocated to that. That goal or that task supports this goal that is part of this main strategic objective, and get them all where that correlation and that aggregate roll-up exists where people can see them. And then the aggregate roll-up part of it that is, I think, most valuable to the board is that you will have a tracking tool. You can see each one of these things. And then instead of me giving you wiggle words about why something isn't on track, you can see how far it is along. And so if you wonder about why the progress of something hasn't moved, then you can ask a question specific to that, and you'll have the ability to quickly look back at that and say, hey, in the last 6 months, I thought this was a priority, and we've been at 42% done for that long. And at least, it provides the rationale, and you can decide whether or not it's appropriate or not, but it will give you a better way to ask questions, I believe. So, wow, that's not the right, this is the old PowerPoint. Sorry, I gotta do a PowerPoint swap. I went to my version 1 instead of my version 2.
Is there a version pizza?
Oh,
Somebody's hungry.
That's the one I opened.
oh,
I've been here 8 hours.
Is there one to the left or to the right of the firehouse? Is that it?
oh boy.
Go to the left.
Left. Oh,
Down.
my milk hand, not my cookie hand. Thank you. All right. Boy, that's clunky, isn't it? Sorry. Okay, here you go. So there's two other significant events. It struck me that lots of times the significant events we're talking about, or that I'm talking about, are always things to do with calls. But there's been some other significant events that took place that required a lot of work and kind of a roll-up of that. And I'm not going to read all these, but moving from Tyler to Paychex to be able to manage our our um, our
Payroll?
PO system. Yeah, I think our payroll and it has other components with our HR information management system. Has been a long process. Tyler is probably a great product from everything that I've heard about it. When you have a large workforce and they have people dedicated to specific tasks in that whole chain of how a requisition is made and then it's approved and then you have somebody. But in our organization, things would just lots of times go into a black hole, and it would take a special person to be able to go find it again, like after it was approved, to be able to go back and look through it. So it just wasn't very well suited for our organization, and it didn't have some of the HR functionality that we felt like we needed. So there's like onboarding checklists, all those kind of things. So we make sure and handle everything the same way, because with that consistency, we reduce the potential for any liability, and so we wanted that. And so that's what this migration to Paychex is about. And it moved the cost from $40,000 annually down to $25,000 annually. So we're in the process of developing, because I just talked about key performance measures, different performance measures that we would use to identify success, and Kiona's already came up with a bunch of them. And so we're gonna get 3 or 4 of them and we made a benchmark 6 months from now, and then we'll report back to you all and say, hey, these are the performance measures we said we were gonna look at. 6 months from now, here's how we're doing with what we thought this would do different. Because I think that is the important part about when we implement a new software like this, is that we come back with, hey, did it meet the mark like we said? And Bob will like it because he will get his POs quicker with a number that is trackable, which is a really big deal for people like Bob that move a lot of different material that is unique to their part of the organization. The other significant event was the DPS audit. So, oh my gosh, when I got rolled in on this, another one of those things I didn't even know was a big deal. But all the different stuff to be able to access the DPS's database, and to make sure that we had proper handling of their records, of the criminal background records, consistent with our hiring process, and that we disposed of them properly. In my position, I had to learn things that I didn't know I had to learn. Kiona taught me and made sure that I knew them for when the person came around. And we were ready for this hardcore on-site audit, and then they got pulled somewhere else with some other 3-letter acronym that had other work for them, and so they did it over the phone. But we still got an A on the audit. But we were ready.
Nice.
Had they done it in person.
Yeah, they're
So,
tough.
yeah, they took that stuff serious. So that is the end of the chief's report. Is there any questions?
I don't believe so. Put your hand down. No. No, I don't think so, Chief. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next item on the agenda is the Cottonwood Dispatch IGA renewal.
Yep. So this renewal was an automatic renewal that was set with an automatic inflation adjustment, and there's no red flags there with the renewal. The service and stuff has been great. They're experiencing the same level of challenges that other dispatch agencies across the nation are in being able to maintain the same number or the number of personnel that they need to do their job. I'm convinced that if we ever chose to say that we're going to go try to find a different place to be dispatched from, same sort of problem would occur.
Sorry.
And I'm much more comfortable with working in the positive relationships we have right there to improve any of the shortcomings that exist than to ever engage in one of those transitions like we have in the past again. So with that being said, since the price increased only what they said it was going to increase, and it was as expected, the service is within the parameters of what we expect, and the relationships are in place to continue to improve the system. That's why we're asking you to approve this for another year.
Okay. With that said, do I have any board member would like to make the motion?
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Cottonwood for dispatch services for Sedona Fire District effective July 1, 2019.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor?
God bless you.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed.
Okay. Thank you.
And finally, final item on the agenda for this evening is the purchase of Tempest VS1 blowers for a total of 4 of them.
So board, little background on this request. So Chief Lukowski was at a fire at the Cowboy Club. Ended up being there was a fire that was in the kitchen that just kind of filled the whole building full of smoke. Knowing that it's a Millette Strip Mall, high-value property, I responded that way. When I got there, they were already working to identify that the fire was under control. There was something that happened back in the cooking area, and they're working to evacuate the smoke with a positive pressure ventilation fan. Same fans that were on the engines when I got hired. And
Oh, wow.
and I walked up to Chief Lukowski, who was probably about 50 yards from the fan, and it was so loud it made my ears hurt. And I don't hear well, so that was kind of a concerning issue to me. So I got a decibel meter up and I walked up next to the fans, and right next to the fans they were 117 decibels.
Oh, my God.
So our hearing protection only protects us up to 90 decibels, the foam earplugs. As you all know, when you're on a fire, you can't wear hearing protection. And the other problem with these fans is that they were filling the occupancy full of carbon monoxide.
Gas blowers.
Yeah, because exactly. And so we would go and sniff the occupancies after we evacuate all the smoke, and oftentimes the CO level would be higher afterwards, and so we'd have to passively evacuate the smoke. And so through that whole process, I asked Chief Cochran if he would write a PO, because I know we talked about replacing these fans. We already have one on engine 531 of these new battery operated types. He provided 3 different quotes, went and actually got the next best one, or the one that was closest in cost, and got a demo of it there, and sat with the Kestrel instruments side by side with each one of them to see how they operated, ran them through a full battery length to determine whether the times that they said were appropriate or not. Yeah, he did a wonderful job of giving me confidence in supporting the decision to purchase those. It isn't a capital item, so it's one of the things that Gabe and I were talking earlier about. It's nice thing about our capital plan is it gives us the latitude to move some of those purchases around as need be when in this case a hazard to firefighters that we should have corrected probably a long time ago, but it was one of those things that never really kind of came to the forefront. As soon as it was, and I asked the BC's help to address it, that they immediately dealt with it. But that's what this is for, and this will allow the same fans that we have on engine 531 to be operating on all the different pieces of apparatus, the out engines.
Thank you, Chief. With that said, I believe there's a motion at the very end of this transmittal. And I move to approve purchase order 1948 for $16,347.19 to LN Curtis for the purchase of 4 Tempest VS1 power blowers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And truly, the final thing is our fire marshal's message, who happens to be absent, but I believe you may be
Yes,
taking.
I'm ready to give this. So fatigue was the thing you want to talk about. It comes in a lot of different ways. A lot of time there's the stress that comes from being attentive to difficult tasks for a long period of time. And so when you're driving after those periods of attentiveness, we tend to have what they call inattentional blindness for periods of time, and more accidents occur. So be careful on the way home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I'd like to close with a big thank you to each and every member of
Thank
this
you.
district
Thank you.
for their involvement in not only the budget, but the fire chief preparation and development, and ultimately the selection, and to the board for the decisions that were made. So with that said, this meeting is adjourned.
Woo-hoo!